first question for you, of course, the Carol Burnett Show, the new DVD out, the lost episodes, Treasures from the Vault. Do you feel any special emotional attachment to the mama character that you played on the show compared to other roles that you had?
Well, yes, only because she's like one of the only recurring characters that I ever got to do on that show.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like she's been fleshed out into an incredible character that everybody has grown to love, and she's just lasted for, a lot of years.
And it's transcended through time. That's the thing. That's an iconic character that even all these decades later, it's still being remembered. You have the new DVD out, of course. But that being said as well, do you think this new DVD is a chance for not only long-time fans of the show to kind of relive their favorite episodes, but also for kind of the newer generation to become fans as well? Like someone such as myself, I'm only 21 years old, and I've only become a customer to the show in recent years. But do you think, this DVD is not only reaching that audience from many decades ago, but kind of the newer generation as well?
Yeah, it is, and it's fascinating how that happens. Because Carol and I have talked about it. Like, you don't think about any of this when you're doing it, that it will last, anywhere near as long as this show has, but it keeps getting reborn. When I first started doing my one-woman show, which was like 2002 is when we started doing it, but I was like, I just assumed that my audience would be older folks from the Burnett Show era, and I was just stunned to see how many college kids would show up. And I stopped one night to ask a bunch of guys that were just having a ball at my show, what? And they said, oh my God, we wouldn't have gotten through without Mama. And so they knew Mama's family, and they came to my show, and they heard all these, backstories about the Burnett Show, and they got on YouTube and sort of found me backwards. And it was almost like a Back to the Future thing,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They'd come back to the show again and go, oh my God, you were really hot. And it was like this really weird, strange backwards. And Carol has said often, she said, I really feel that YouTube has been largely responsible for the show lasting like it has, that people find it backwards. And because it was well written and well done and has held up fairly well. It wasn't too topical, so a lot of it has held up really well. It's, these generations just keep finding it. And now it's almost like, I even look at these early episodes, a lot of which I was not in. I was only contracted to play her sister in the very beginning, so a lot of these episodes it's almost like a little television history to me, to go back and see almost like the genesis of the Burnett Show and how it grew and how it really came to be the show that it became.
And that's the thing, the humor in the show kind of transcends time, that it's funny in just about like any era of television. Like it's still funny, just as funny now in 2016 as it was many decades ago. So that being said, what does it mean to you that few other shows, if any other shows, can say that they're just as funny now as they were, 40, 30 years ago?
Well, there are a few, and for those shows, my kids grew up watching I Love Lucy.
Mm-hmm.
I still watch those episodes and laugh at them. I think it's just a tribute to great writing and remarkable performance. It was really a well done show, the Burnett Show. I look back at it, and it was kind of a glossy production for its time, and really well done. And my God, how proud are we to be in that handful of shows that have stood up like that.
And over the past, 40 years or so since the show initially aired, comedy in television has transcended, has evolved immensely, either whether it be for better or for worse. So at the same time, do you think that comedy in television, in the fact that it's evolved over the last several decades, are you a fan of the direction that comedy and TV has taken, or do you kind of prefer the style that the Carol Burnett Show, had many decades ago?
Well, things are always going to change and evolve. I'm not sure I don't know if it's better or worse. I do think a lot of the sitcoms nowadays can get a little dark, a little cynical.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it's just like so trashy. I'm like, seriously? I don't get it. But nobody is having the fun that we had. Nobody. I'll have young people come up and say, I guess you guys really had a good time on that show. I'm like, You have no idea, because it's not going to happen nowadays. It's just not. You're not. Things are not done that way anymore. And because Carol came from live television in New York City and brought much of that staff with her when she moved to California to do the Burnett Show, that's the way our show ran. It ran like a live show. And I think that's why people look back at it so fondly, because what you see on the TV screen is what those people in the audience were seeing when they were there. And, I mean, Carol she didn't want to keep that audience waiting. That was her thing. So we would go like a bat out of hell, like a live show. And we didn't stop to do pickups. We didn't spend all night, redoing stuff. It was every bit as much fun as what you see on the screen.
So obviously, and having lasted throughout the entirety of the series, this is going to be a pretty difficult question to answer here, and I'm sure you've answered this before. But what are some of your fondest memories in working on the Carol Burnett Show?
Oh, that's so hard, because the whole thing is like this incredible wash of memories to me, and just to have been a part of it is just such a special, separate chapter of my life. And I feel like not only did I have fun on the show, but I kind of grew up there. I mean, I was 18 when I started. I went through a bad first marriage. I found my husband, who was the makeup man on the show. I had both my kids on that show. It was a pivotal growing period for me,
So at the same time, too, I mean, well, no, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it's just the whole thing is just this incredible chapter. I will say that I did love it when, probably more than everybody, when we would have somebody that was sort of young and relevant musically on the show, which we didn't have too often. Like when Bobby Gentry came on the show, I was like, oh my God, because I was such a fan of the Billy Joe. Or when the Jackson 5 showed up, I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. So, but meeting Rita Hayworth, I don't know, did I appreciate that? Meeting Jimmy Stewart and Gloria Swanson and Betty Grable, and gosh, did I appreciate it? Not at the time.
And that's the thing too. That leads right next into my next question. Your favorite celebrity guest stars to work with on the show, but at the same time, I'll kind of paraphrase that question a little bit differently based off what you just said. In the fact that, did you ever think in your wildest dreams when you first started the show way back when that you would have the experience to work with all these various different people that you kind of grew up watching?
No, I mean, no. And honestly, I thought I was going to graduate from high school, go to college, learn to clean teeth, become a dental hygienist, marry a rich dentist, and hang it up. I never dreamed that I would be kidnapped by show business or, rub elbows with any of these people. It was very surreal. For a kid my age, it was just very surreal. The whole experience. Not anything I ever thought I would be doing.
And also, too, so when I was doing my research on the show just recently, I found out through some article that was released, that was written a couple months ago, that it was through a fan letter that you joined the show initially. So do you want to expand upon that a little bit? Is that true, or is that a false rumor?
No, it is true. And it's actually, I was just talking to a gal. We were talking. She said, you need to bring your show down to San Diego. She's in San Diego. And I tour the country with a one-woman show. And that's always that's the first story that I tell in the show, because a lot of people know that I wrote a fan letter. Some people know that there was a contest involved. Nobody ever has any of the details right. So it's like the first story I tell, because it is sort of unreal. I mean, nowadays, I suppose, if you were young, you would maybe tweet and hope Carol would find out. I don't know. She doesn't tweet. She's not on Twitter, so that wouldn't work. But anyway, I was just a fan letter writer when I was a kid. I wrote to everybody that was on television. I have to say mostly young guys that I had crushes on, but I did write a lot of fan letters. And when I was a senior in high school, I entered a contest called Miss Fireball, and it was just our local fireman's ball. And the newspaper gal said that I looked like a young Carol Burnett. So my mom said, why don't you write her a fan letter? So I did, and sent my little picture off and told her I'd love to meet her someday, and that everybody said I looked like her. And the letter happened to land on her desk the day of the contest, and just on a hunch, she took my dad's name out of this article, looked us up in the phone book, called me after school, and made arrangements to come and see this contest. And, yeah, that's how I ended up on the show.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever think that when you wrote that letter, I mean, it just kind of goes back to the original question I asked you before, that just one little fan letter would turn into just this amazing career in show business that it has over the past several decades for you?
No, of course not. So, I mean, you never know what's going to turn into what.
Mm-hmm. So at the same time, too, I mean, when the show first debuted, did you think that the show would have the massive fan following that it did? I mean, not only at that time, but again, like I said earlier, even decades later, people are still talking about the show. Like I said, the new DVD's out now, which are just flying off the shelves. People are still buying it. People are still talking about it. I'm sure people still come up to you asking about the show. What does that mean to you?
I am just honored to be a part of it. I feel like I got to touch the golden age of television. And I got to go to the Harvard School of Comedy in front of America. So to me, I love it when people that are my age or, come up to me and say, we grew up together. Because, yeah, I feel like those were a lot of my formative years were spent on that show learning. Mm-hmm. Doing my undergrad with Harvey and Tim and Carol, and having the best teachers in the world. And, I just saw Carol a couple of weeks ago, but I said, I'm always getting this question, did you realize you were a pioneer for other women? She said, oh, hell, honey, we were just broke, and I needed a job, and we were just trying to do the best we could. Mm-hmm. You don't know this. You don't know this when you're doing a show. You're just trying to do the best you can.
Mm-hmm. Just doing the job and just not aware of the just inspirational impact that it's going to have on many people just even years later.
No. No. I will say this. Carol is a very special person. Mm-hmm. And you don't run into a lot of people like her, particularly in show business. She's giving and she's nurturing, and she's every bit as special as everybody thinks she is. And I feel like all of us on the Burnett Show are sort of the benevolent benefactors of all this love that everybody feels for Carol. And it's this lovely little umbrella to be under. And it's kind of a special, there aren't many places like that. I mean, it's called the Burnett Show, the Emerald City. There aren't many places like that, and it's very hard to get to that place. And I think because there were only 3 networks back in the day, and only the best of the best got on television, everybody has these wonderful memories of, that's what my daughter said. She said, my God, everybody in the whole country watched that show, didn't they? And I said, well, yeah, because that's what was on.
Exactly.
It was not, you couldn't go on Netflix and buy whatever you wanted to watch. Mm-hmm. It just didn't work that way. There wasn't even cable, so.
Well, that's a great question at the same time.
It was a different time. That's very cool that everybody looks back so fondly at it.
Also that, too, I mean, this wasn't a part of my questions, but now that you mentioned that, do you think if the show kind of came up today, let's say the show debuted nowadays, like on Netflix or on TV or whatever, do you think it would still have the same impact, even if it was written the same way, didn't like adjust to the modern style, like that kind of trashy style that we talked about earlier? It still had the same jokes, the same humor, which, as I said earlier, transcended time. Do you think it would have the same impact as it did in that early age, that golden age of television when there were, so few channels that people could watch?
I don't know. Mm-hmm. What do you think? Would it have that? I don't know what show does have that kind of impact now. Mm-hmm. I don't even know it's possible to have that kind of an impact nowadays.
Especially with so many shows and so many outlets.
Are so fractured. Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to say.
It was a time when, the whole family sat down together and watched a show every single week. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't happen now, so.
Yeah, not even close. So I think it definitely is like just a changing of the times, for better or for worse. Like I said earlier, probably for the worse, because I think I'd prefer kind of that style of sitting down and watching a show as opposed to like binge watching it on Netflix. But now people can watch the show on the DVD, which I guess is, even back then, which wasn't even imaginable, which wasn't even feasible to kind of sit down and watch every episode of the show on just one DVD set, whereas you had to sit down every week and kind of watch the show week by week, episode by episode. But speaking of which, kind of final question for you as well: Are there any episodes in particular on this DVD set that you're happy to see finally get released to the public, and that longtime fans can finally see these lost episodes of sorts?
Well, I was in a lot of them. You know, 'cause like I said, I was only hired to play her sister in the beginning, but I did love going back and seeing the movie takeoffs we did, like the Fun Family with Mickey Rooney, and I remember just loving that. I had such a crush on John Davidson.
Mm-hmm.
I remember doing those. It was so much fun, and then just so incredible to you know, to work with somebody like Bob Mackie and not know what you were going to be wearing every week, you know, and you'd go, I mean, he did incredibly beautiful costumes. And it was just so much fun as a young girl to go get all dressed up every week, you know?
Mm-hmm. To kind of relive those memories as well and watching these episodes back, too.
Yeah.
Just an amazing experience. But like I said, people can relive these same episodes as well from their childhood, whether they're watching for the first time, 100th time, doesn't matter. Check out the DVD, The Carol Burnett Show, The Treasures from the Vault, The Lost Episodes. Vicki, I appreciate your time. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Have a great day. Thanks.
You too. Bye-bye. Bye.